Yeah, yesterday, or I don't know, maybe, yeah, yesterday. Yesterday, module 0, we talked about preparation. Remember preparation? There's preparation, optimization, and evaluation. Well, I don't have a module on preparation because I think that might be like a 3 or 4 hour module. But I have a module on one little thing you do in preparation. It's not little. One thing you can do in preparation, which is pilot studies. Everybody understand what's going on? So like preparation is so much bigger than pilot studies. It's like, what's my conceptual model? Building relationships with schools. I mean, preparation is this monstrous thing that you just constantly have to be doing. I'm talking about a sliver of it today called pilot studies, okay? Everybody with me? All right, that's what I'm gonna try to do, is talk about pilots. I'm gonna give you D3C's perspective on pilot studies. And one more thing, and I'm glad Greg is here, because it is highly possible that my perspective on pilot studies is not consistent with IES's perspective on pilot studies. Okay? And that's okay with me, but I need you to just make sure you turn on that filter. You know what I mean? So I'm going to need you to talk to Greg and talk to other IES grantees here who actually know how IES views pilot studies so that you know what to take from this, and when you submit the grant, what you call a pilot versus something else. Nonetheless, what you learn here today should be useful, whether you call it a pilot or not. Everybody with me? But that's the prep. Because I remember being in rooms with Jackie Buckley and where I was flat out told, well, that's not how IES defines pilot studies, right? But you need to know that, okay? And I don't actually know, okay? All right, here we go. So I'm gonna situate pilot studies as preparation. I kind of already did that, but I'm gonna take it to the finish line. Notice what I'm saying. I'm situating pilot studies as preparation for success. The biggest message you're gonna hear me say about 5 times in the next hour is pilot studies are not about showing promise. Okay? If that's what IES calls a pilot study, and this is something different. You guys with me? I don't even understand the concept showing promise. I don't even know what that means, right? And I do have some thoughts later that maybe you'll say, Danny, that's what they mean by showing promise, okay? All right, but I just need you to like start taking this all apart. I'm going to talk about specific goals of a pilot study and some tools that you might reach for. And I'm going to show you an example pilot study. It's actually one that Connie brought up. And then I'm glad I'm going there again because Connie didn't really talk about it. She's like, oh, and it was hard. And then I don't know if you remember that. Do you remember that? She's like, and it was so hard. And then she stopped, right? Like time ran out. So I'm gonna dig a little deeper. I'm gonna dig a little deeper because yeah. And then I'm gonna show you 3 approaches to getting sample size for pilot studies. Okay? All right? And none of them are going to be the same calculation you would do for a full-scale trial. All right, let's do it. All right. A pilot study is not a full-scale evaluation or confirmatory trial. All right? This is a full-scale evaluation trial. There's 2 boxes here. There's business as usual, and there's an adaptive intervention. Okay? A pilot study is not that. But a pilot study also is not a full-scale optimization randomized trial like a SMART. In the early days, you'd be surprised how many people, when we were first coming out with SMARTs 15 years ago or 20 years ago, how many people were like, oh, so this is a pilot? This is another way to do a pilot? No. Optimization trials are not pilots. They're not in the preparation phase. Okay? What does success look like at the end? So I'm kind of working backwards. All right? So at the end of a successful pilot, this is what I think should be happening. You know, these are all my opinions, right? You should be better prepared to justify the significance of a full-scale randomized trial, whether it be an evaluation or an optimization, right? And this should say you should be even better prepared, because even when you wrote the pilot study, you were already justifying stuff, but you'll see how it sharpens up by the time you get to the end of a pilot. That's number 1. Number 2, at the end of the pilot, if you're in the space of adaptive interventions, which is this room, you will have adaptive interventions that are well operationalized and manualized. So guys, notice what I'm saying. I'm going to repeat it because I put these slides up before, and at the end of the pilot, you have the adaptive intervention manual in your hand. And if you have 4 embedded adaptive interventions, you have 4 manuals. You guys hear what I'm saying? You'll be surprised how many early career folks, they're at the end of their early career, they got 5 years of going to heaven, right? Okay, got a K award, and they don't have a manualized intervention, and then they're ready to write an R01. Like, the thing has to be manualized, okay? You want to manualize it. That's at the end what happens. You have adaptive interventions that are acceptable, feasible to stakeholders. There's a bunch of other ables, like implementable, James. You have, you remember module 0? Step 1 is thinking about the real world as step 1. So when you're coming out of the pilot, you already know this thing is doable. The last thing you need is to get to the full-scale trial and realize this thing is all going to fall apart in your face, right? Now that, and you just got a $5 million grant, right? That's not a good situation to be in, all right? So remember, this is all happening at the end of your pilot. And I know we no longer use the word stakeholders, so I should replace that. So feasible, acceptable, implementable to all of your partners, your community partners, your researchers, you know what I mean? Okay? Your clinicians. And then you will, at the end of a pilot, be better able, or even better able, to justify that the proposed trial design is feasible. This is not like I'm reusing the same words, or I'm using different words to say the same thing. These are all different, okay? Here's all about your interventions. This one is all about you as a researcher. And that is a totally different manual. There's 2 manuals that you end with in a pilot study. On one pocket, you have your intervention manual, okay, or intervention manuals. And there's no randomization anywhere in that manual, and it could be thick. And in the other pocket, you have your research manual, And that's like the research design, the consent form. You guys with me? Do not conflate those if you want to be doing real world, what we call effectiveness research. If you're an efficacy person, meaning you're not at the stage of your science yet where there's a strong distinction between what the researcher is doing and the real world, chances are you don't have 2 manuals. You have 1, and it's all conflated. You guys with me? And believe it or not, that's where a lot of our manuals live right now. And it's kind of upsetting to me. I'm trying to change that through talks like these. Like, if you're an efficacy scientist, you don't ever draw the line between the role of a researcher and the role of the intervention. I don't think that's a good thing, but that is just the world we live in. Like Pfizer, when Pfizer conducts a randomized trial to get FDA approval, I assure you, there is no researcher versus clinician. It's all one and the same. Like, you come to me, I give you the pill, I pay you to give you the pill. It's all conflated. That's fine because it was efficacy research, but not in this room, not for effectiveness implementation. Everybody with me? You have 2 manuals. Okay? All right. A successful pilot is not, I found the clinically significant difference between intervention A versus B. That's not what you're aiming for at the end of your pilot. It's not, I found the large effect size between, it's not, I found the statistically significant. I don't know how else to say it. It's not, this one is, I'm saying it. This one, I am saying the same thing 3 different ways. This one is a different concept. This one is provocative. You do not use pilot studies to decide what the effect size is for a randomized trial. Do not. You want to make my blood boil? You do that. You do not. You do not. You do not use pilot studies to get the effect size. And by the way, I can point you to, like, Tim is smiling. Tim Lycurgus, my statistician. I can point you to journal articles in your field saying this. But for some reason, it's just not going in the brain, you know? I'm talking like the big dogs in your area, like Elizabeth Stewart. Her students, they all have papers on this. You do not use a pilot to choose an effect size. Okay? To size a randomized trial. The effect size, we'll get to that. We're going to get to that. Okay? So this is what you don't use a pilot for. Got it? Everybody with me? All right? Okay. So pilot studies are a key part of preparing. I already said that. You already saw this yesterday in Module 0, but I'm showing it a slightly different way. Here's like most from CADIO, right? This thing that's part of that Module 0 that I talked about. You can either have a study where you're preparing, a study where you're optimizing, a study where you're evaluating. I wanted to show you this because I wanted to show you that a full-blown traditional RCT is over here. A SMART is an optimization trial. These are both full-scale trials. This is a pilot study, that's preparation. I am not suggesting you must march in this direction. That would be me thinking for you. I have seen people do a preparation for an RCT, right? So like replaces pilot RCT, and then you go straight to the RCT. And then I have seen what I'm showing you here, a pilot SMART, and then you go into the, you guys with me? I'm not trying to think for you. I'm just trying to share how these things are different. Okay? All right, everybody good so far? Any questions so far? And all of this is in all these papers, okay? All right, let's keep going. So now I'm moving to specific goals of pilot. So let's get down and dirty. Like what, okay, Danny, if I'm not looking for statistically significant effect, what am I doing in a pilot? And this is an attempt, just an attempt, okay? So all of these things might be happening in a pilot study. You might be doing a pilot randomized trial. You might be doing some qualitative research because you're doing focus groups because you're trying to understand, is this thing feasible? Why not? You're talking to the teachers. You're going to go hang out with James and do some implementation science. The implementation scientists, they've gotten really good because they're so darn serious about making the thing real world. They've actually, I got to give it to them, they have a few things going on right now that are actually pretty delicious about how to go about understanding if this thing is going to survive in the real world. They really do. And I give it to them because we didn't have that till they came along. So they're doing great. But there's other things. You might be doing observational study analyses of prior data, your last randomized trial, to prepare yourself for the full-scale trial. And this runs the gamut. Mediation analysis, mechanisms, all that. Refining your conceptual model based on some empirical. That's all happening in preparation for a full-scale trial. And I'll say something a little bit provocative here that is not in my slide set, but it's like a new idea that I've had recently. It turns out that like all of these analysis about mediation, mechanism, and all that, like when I've been thinking really hard about the role of those, all of those are to help you in your next trial or to be able, James, you might like this. The story about how something works is either to help you for the next trial you're going to go get or to build that story into your intervention. We don't see papers talking about this. Like, how many times have you heard somebody, like, pretend I'm a clinician and I'm not, but I assure you that, like, a lot of CBT sessions, like the first time you meet a psychologist that does CBT, like, yeah, we're going to be doing CBT, and the first thing they do is explain to you what CBT is about. And this is not a research thing. This is like a psychologist working with a patient. Oh, yeah, so CBT, and they'll say the theory behind it is that it's going to help you change the way you think. That's what the C's for. And it's going to help you change the way you behave. That's what the B's for. What just happened there? That as part of the intervention, the psychologist intervening on the patient used what's known about the mechanisms. So, like, I think that's the service of mechanisms and all that stuff. It's for either the next study or for the intervention itself. I love that. So here I am trying to show you the lay of the land of what you could do in a pilot. So in terms of better justifying the significance of your proposed trial, definitely you have some preliminary data analyses from other studies in the past that, I might, you have, this is where you're doing that mechanism stuff, right? Like, oh, gee, was it true that when somebody changed the way they thought and changed the way they behaved, was it true that the school performance got better? All those cool observational studies, they all go in there. This is delicious. I love qualitative iterative. The first time I saw the word iterative, it was from someone who is an IES person, and I loved it. I've also seen the term formative. That's just in my mind, all of this is all about raise your hand if you're qualitative research. Yeah. This is so important. It's obscene how important this stuff is. All right? This is talking to people. And this is going to play a role in everything, right? This is going to play a role in justifying the significance of your study, in manualizing your adaptive interventions, in understanding acceptability and feasibility. The only way to, as far as I can tell, to understand that is to talk to the clinicians, to talk to the school teachers. I don't see any other way you're going to understand that. Get face to face with them and get real. And that's all qualitative research. Quant's not going to help you. I mean, quant could support that, but you're going to need to go in there and talk to these folks. And okay, and then there's this one, small scale proposed trial, right? That's what I call a pilot randomized trial. And that one, you see the two big check marks there? That one is to get a little more information about acceptability, feasibility after you've done some of the qualitative work. It's like I did the qualitative work, I built it into my interventions and my trial design, and now I piloted the trial design and I piloted the new interventions, and now I got even more data about acceptability and feasibility. You know what I mean? I kind of put my qualitative work into the real world. But even more important, a pilot study is to prepare you, the researcher. Remember the two manuals? Because guess what, y'all? When you go propose a full-scale SMART or a full-scale RCT, you have to tell the reviewer that you're able to do the recruitment, that you know how to assess research outcomes on time, that you know how to engage people back in research. That's over here. Engaging people back in research is different from the other one, engaging someone back in treatment. That's over here. That's in this manual. And you better darn have those separated. So if I'm paying someone to get their research outcomes, it's the researcher paying to get the research outcomes. But that's totally different from what the clinician or the teacher's doing to keep the kiddo engaged. The teacher's not paying the kid. But I can't tell you how many studies I see where those things are conflated. From the perspective of the kiddo or the family with autism, they're like, oh, I'm going to go get treatment. I'm going to go into the hospital to get treatment. Oh yeah, and they're paying for my parking. What just happened there? What just happened there is that in the eyes of that family, the intervention is getting treatment and getting paid to go parking. Well, what's going to happen after that trial, you guys? Is that going to be replicable in the real world? Well, only if you pay them. Right? You know what I mean? So it's this is what the pilot is all about. Yeah.
Okay, I also feel like that's delicious, right?
Yeah.
The qualitative component, the study before the study. Right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
I think that this piece, so I've been a part of RCTs that have used qualitative data, community-based data in order to give us our mechanisms. But when it comes to smart designs, any examples that you can share, in particular for, I'm interested in a very specific population that is not sick. We don't have a lot of data. So how, where would you start with that?
Yeah, I will have some references up, but if I forget, let me just say it now. In the very early days when Billy and I were still not tenured, Billy and I did a special issue in what we call the Blue Journal. A Blue Journal was the Journal of Clinical Child and Adolescent Psychology. I don't know, we call it the Blue Journal. And I did a special issue. We did a special issue, Billy and I, on adaptive interventions. And in that, because it was early days, we didn't really have a lot of full-scale smarts. Almost every study I invited to the special issue was a pilot. And so go in there and you'll start to see how, but the caveat is that that's old now, right? Like that's when, 2012, right? It's like I'm ancient now. But that was early days of piloting. And then if you follow the citations to those articles, you might get lucky and get new ones. So there should be a body of trials that is all about piloting. There should be a piloting adaptive interventions in smarts. There should now be a body of that. Because apparently Google is telling me that my paper was pretty well cited, like the pilot paper. The paper where I teach people how to think about pilots for smarts. So I'm thinking, I haven't gone and looked. I'm thinking there's going to be a bunch of papers there. I'm not saying like that solved everything, but I'm saying there should be some papers. Okay? Does that help? Yeah, and hopefully I'll have some citations. All right. Yeah, I don't even know if I need to put this. Common sources of data for a preliminary analysis. Well, sky's the limit here. You might be doing your if it was Greg, he's got like 3,000 randomized trials he's analyzing to get ready for the next one. You might have previous pilot data. You have administrative data, electronic medical record, observational,
What do you mean for preliminary analysis?
Yeah, you know how in the grant, you have your preliminary analysis section? You're doing all that in the context of the pilot or the preparation that came before it. And so I'm just kind of like saying, sky's the limit here. Go to all the data sources you have, but these are all things you put, these are all things that are preparing you for that next study. And what can you do with these data analyses? Well, a lot of you are going to be like doing machine learning model. I mean, it's to your heart's content. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at that point. At that point, you're done doing your primary analyses from your last trial. So at the point at which I'm thinking now, go fish away. Just make sure you tell your reader you fished. Don't fish and then tell me, you know what I mean? You didn't, you know what I mean? Just fish to your heart's content. Put all of that is going to be useful. If you're Billy, you heard Billy yesterday, she did some ROC analyses because she wanted to understand early predictors during treatment of, early predictors of future failure. Right? So what did Billy do? Billy took data from a prior trial in weight loss. I'm just rehashing what she said yesterday. She took data from a prior trial in weight loss. So all the people, she took everybody that was in the intervention arm, and she started looking post or during intervention, what are some signs during intervention that are predictive of future failure? That's critical for a smart or an optimization trial. You're going to be doing all that. In fact, Billy did all that in preparation to write that grant. Like, you know what I mean? To get the cutoffs that she put into the optimization trial. You know what I'm saying, y'all? This is the stuff you do. You might look at measurement. You know what I mean? So like, what I don't see happening often is I see a lot of people publishing, but they don't like line it up. They're like, I am writing this paper because it's going to prepare me for the next trial. But the majority of our science is actually like this, because if you think about it, the pre-specified papers are limited. It's like the primary aim and maybe the secondary aim one. That's where all the p-values go. All the other papers, it's just all about the next study. All the papers your postdoc is doing. They're all, they're building their careers, and it's all about the next study, right? Is this being helpful? I don't know. Am I being helpful? I hope I am. All right. Analyses that help you build your dynamic theory of change, or whatever you want to call it, your logic model, your conceptual model, your mechanistic model. Statisticians don't care what you call it. But we want you to do all those analyses because they inform the design of the intervention. They inform all that. This is all beautiful stuff. All right? And then this is where I wish I had some qualitative research background. Please, somebody help me here. So, common sources of data for qualitative research. Well, the qualitative concerns raised by experts in the previous trial. So listen, the people I know who are phenomenal at this, every single time they're doing a full-scale randomized trial, they have someone on the team who's a qualitative researcher who built in this cool little thing where they went in and they were harvesting during the trial all the things that were going wrong in a qualitative way. The people that do that, they're good. So they got their qualitative researcher, In the full-scale trial, they're there, they're hired, they're on the COI investigator, and that qualitative research is making some real magic happen, and they do it in different ways, that don't hinder or harm the rigor of the current trial. Like, for example, one qualitative researcher once told me they had this whiteboard where all the psychologists that were doing their intervention, intervening on the people that were part of the study, they would just go to that whiteboard and write down all the things they wish they could change about the intervention. A whiteboard dump. Why is that important? It's important first because we need the qualitative research for the next study, but also because you don't want that psychologist actually changing the intervention during the trial. Because talk about it's over before it started, right? You got to stick to the protocols, but please tell me what that is. I'm harvesting all that information. That's delicious. The other one that I saw was there was this one scholar who was real legit serious about they wanted to do an analysis after the SMART about candidate moderators, but not the pre-specified ones that were part of the SMART, like new ones. So they had this whiteboard thing going, and put the other side of the whiteboard, they had all the psychologists. As they were treating, they had them write down, I think that this kid really is going to benefit from augmentation because that one little sentence, when you look at all of them, I'm going to get all this delicious information about new candidate moderators I never would have thought of. But they didn't use that information to try to give the kid what they thought. No. We told them, you stick to protocol, but you dump those ideas on the whiteboard. You guys see what I'm talking about? But this requires strategy. This requires thinking. This requires having that qualitative research there with you to do this. You know what I mean? And of course, when I tried it, I'm a statistician. I failed miserably. I think it was Connie's AIM study. I said, Steph, Jilly, Connie, I want to do this thing I saw this qualitative researcher do where we get all the clinicians to elicit, and then of course it completely fell apart, right? One site did it, one site didn't. It was is a complete. But you guys see what I'm talking about? Okay? This is all qualitative research. So what do you do when you talk to your community partners? You ask them, what are the ideal components you would include? You ask them, do you think this is going to work? Ask the teacher before you do the full-scale trial, All right, I don't need to bang your head against the wall. But notice, guys, I can go on and on and on, and none of this is about finding a treatment effect. And all of this is really hard. This is what all career development awardees should be doing, all K awardees, That's not to say that career development awardees and K awardees are not doing analyses of randomized trials, because they're also training in their skills. All right, and here, I love this slide. So if you've been falling asleep, I want you to pay attention. If you've been dozing off, wake up right now, because here's what I want you to have, and I had a slide like this previously, but now I'm doing it again. I want you to have the two manuals, right? Okay. This is what I want you to have prior to a pilot. So, okay, this is actually a new slide. A lot of you don't know how to write a pilot grant. I know this firsthand because the pilot grants I review, they don't look any different from the RCT. It's like I'm looking at the pilot grant and I'm looking at what I would write in an RCT, and they're identical. So this is the slide where I'm telling you what I think you could tell your reviewer when you're writing a pilot grant. You could tell them, at the end of this grant, or you in your grant, when you're writing your pilot grant, you have a clear acknowledgement that these components have not been tested for their acceptability and feasibility. Why are you so scared to say that? The pilot is the place to say that. Say that. That's why I'm asking you for my pilot money. I don't know if these things are acceptable. They're good ideas. They're novel. I also want you to say, we have some expertise on my team. I have a senior person but I'm not sure that we're fully prepared to conduct a full-scale trial. This pilot is going to help me. And then you explain that to them. I'm going to get my ducks in a row with my recruitment strategy. I'm going to get my ducks in a row with my measures. Do you know what I'm saying? Are you guys following me? Like, this is what you want to tell the reviewer of your pilot study. You guys got it? Now, the tricky thing, the little known secret about pilot studies, and the reason they're so hard to write, and the reason they look exactly like RCTs in 90% of the cases. Here's why. There's the cultural piece, because a lot of people don't want to air their laundry. They don't want to appear to be not ready, which is completely like not real. Okay, put the cultural piece aside. The other hard part about a pilot grant is that in order to write a really good pilot trial, you actually have to design 2 trials. You have to design your optimization trial, the full-scale one, the one you started designing and then realized you couldn't do. You have to design that one. Show the reviewer that trial design. Like, you know, if I had my ways, if I had all the money in the world, these are the delicious scientific questions I want to answer in my optimization trial. But then, so you just designed an optimization trial. But then in that same grant, you say, but I'm not ready. And this is why I need this pilot. That is the strategy of a successful pilot. And every single time I've written one that way, they've gone pretty good, let me tell you. Because I'm being real with the reviewers. I'm not trying to put a veil over their heads. I'm like, look, I got these delicious questions. I want to do a full-scale SMART so bad. And then you kind of slow them down. Like you get them excited. Like if you know, right, Billy? You build up. Like they're green in their faces with envy because they wish they were on the study with you. All right? You get them excited. And then you say, but I don't know. Like I got to get my recruitment ducks in a row. You know what I mean? Clear acknowledgement that you're not ready. And then you say, thus, the aims of my pilot are, boom, please give me my money. You guys see that? So when you do that, you're showing the reviewer the runway. And you're showing the reviewer your maturity, your integrity, and you're showing them you're putting it all on your sleeves. You're being real with them. I'm not ready, but listen, if you give me this money, I'm going to be ready. Because then in the approach section, you're going to come home run. You're going to be telling them all the things you're going to be doing. And guess what? None of them are finding a p-value less than 0.05. You guys see what I'm saying? So this is how I write pilot studies, and it's worked for me, okay? All right, let me pause there for a second. Any thoughts so far? I don't know how much time I have. Ian, how am I doing? Okay. Okay, so let me rock and roll then.
Hold on a second. One thing you mentioned the other is that, so I agree with you, having the vision for the full-scale trial that you want to do, that's critical for designing the trial. And I think, yes, we talked about this yesterday, right? Said, okay, the fact that we were able to sketch a trial is great because now you can decide where are you, you know. Are you at a point where you can implement all this feasibly, acceptably, whatever, or not, which means you're in the preparation pilot. Another thing that I see happening in review panels, but this is NIH, I don't know about IES, there's a big push for specifying clear criteria for transitioning from the pilot phase to the full-scale phase.
Oh, I love
So
those.
the reviewers expect you to have that, and if you don't have that, you're going to be flagged. So for example, they want you to say, in the pilot phase, I will move to the full-scale SMART if my recruitment rate is above 8%. Satisfaction from each stage is above the, I don't know, 73%.
Yeah, go, no-go criteria.
Go, no.
God, I love that.
And by the way, now what I'm seeing is people actually publishing novel pilot projects in clinical trials journals. Like top-notch clinical trial journals
Yeah.
started publishing pilot studies, pilot smarts that have.
We're turning a corner.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So a few years ago, they would never do stuff like that.
No.
They would only publish full-scale trials. And now they're moving in this direction. But the way to ensure rigor here is to be clear about the criteria for moving from the pilot
Yeah.
phase to the full-scale.
Yeah. And I have 9 minutes, so let me rock and roll. But here are citations, none of which purposefully include the one paper I wrote. Every single one of these papers, every single one of them is saying what a pilot is for and what it's not. And all of them are agreeing with everything I just shared with you. And look at, these are all, you know what I mean? Look at this one, Journal of Evaluation. Oh, there should be one, I don't know where it is. Oh, right here, American Journal of Evaluation. Isn't that one of y'all's? Isn't that an education? Don't a lot of education people, maybe not Nixer, but don't a lot of education people hang out at that journal? Yeah, it's like a legit journal. Like, there it is, Elizabeth Stewart. That's a big dog. The non-use, misuse, and proper use of pilot studies. And you'll read that and you're gonna see it loud and clear. Do not use a pilot to choose your effect size. All right, I only got 9 minutes, so let me show you an example pilot. I'm gonna rock faster. Do you guys remember? Well, I don't expect you to remember. This was the very first ever multi-level adaptive intervention, which is my baby right now. That's the area Tim and I are working in right now, and some of my other students, Gabe is gonna be working more so in this area very soon. And this was the very first ever that I can, think of, multi-level adaptive intervention. And there was a school level component. Connie showed this to you guys, but she didn't quite go there. She didn't talk about them like the layers. It was actually a 3-level adaptive intervention. So she came into these schools, she had a bunch of schools, and she had a school level intervention called Remaking Recess. She went into classrooms within that school, and she had a classroom level. Oh yeah, Jilly and Steph are here. And then at the individual level, right? So this is and then she's like, oh, it was hard. Well, this is what we call a multi-level adaptive intervention. And I knew we were bleeding edge when we were writing this. And I'm like, no, Connie. We got, no. Because she wanted to write a full-scale IES grant. We're like, no, we go in pilot. We're going pilot because this is going to be, no one's ever done this. A multi-level adaptive intervention has never been done. And this was the trial that if we had all the money and had all the feasibility and ducks in a row, this was the trial we wanted to run, the full scale. So what did we do? We wrote a pilot and we said, dear IES, we're gonna pilot this monster. And we made a list in the grant. We made a list of all the things that could go wrong. We did. Steph, I don't know if you remember this. We did. It got funded. I was so proud of it. We didn't say list of things that could go wrong. We said concerns related to the intervention we're doing. And look at this laundry list. We're worried that we're not going to be able to identify children because we were doing something pretty novel. There was a paraprofessional that was in the playground coding to see which kids needed more. You know what I mean? Right? How do we transition kids? Can we provide? Blah, blah, blah. Will the teachers go for it? We literally listed out all the things we thought could go wrong. By the way, they all went wrong. Right, Steph? Every single one of them went wrong. And I know Connie yesterday just said, oh, and it was hard, but there's so much delicious science there, right? And we published it. Right? We published it. We actually published a paper that said all the gazillion things that went wrong. It's published. You guys can go find it. And so this was the grant. This is how the grant was written. And I assure you, and then we had another laundry list of all the things that could go wrong in this trial, the research things that could go wrong. And the thing got funded. I got 5 minutes. Anyway, you guys see the point? So this is a real world example. And I know that it didn't get a lot of airplay from Connie, but I thought it was phenomenal. And honestly, the whole go, no-go thing? Well, it was straight up no-go. It was no-go. Neither Steph, nor me, nor Jilly, nor Connie are working on this project. It's no-go. And that doesn't mean that we're not going to have multi-level adaptive interventions. It means that this one is a no-go. Right? But I loved the novelty. It fired me up. Right? In fact, I only write grants that I'm super excited about and that are high risk, high payoff, right? Okay, sample size. I got 5 minutes left. This is the question most of you guys want to hear. So there's really 3 approaches and then I'm done. Approach number one in a SMART, okay? One approach is you need to know the sample size for your pilot. Dear God, please do not do a sample size formula for a pilot that is about testing an effect. Do not. Instead, here's one idea. You want to ensure the research team can implement and assess feasibility and aspects of the SMART and all the treatment paths, that is A, B, C, D, E, F, that make up the embedded AIs, right? Like wouldn't you want acceptability, feasibility data that I can pull off all these treatment paths, right? So what you can do, this is one way to do it, is you can tell, hey, Connie, or whoever you're working with, hey, Bill, in order to do this, how many people do you think you want in each of these cells to be able to do this? And of course, the qualitative researchers are at the table, because the qualitative researcher is going to say, I think I can do it with a focus group of 4 people, or whatever, right? Or the qualitative researcher is going to say, no, I think I need 10, whatever. So they give you their number in each of these cells, the minimum number. And then, so the scientist chooses the number of students in each treatment path. This is the qualitative scientist, effectively. Then, all right, you have to tell me what your anticipated non-response rate is. You have to. And then you also tell me, all right, you have to tell me the probability that I actually get, the probability that the actual number of students in each path is greater than M. This is not power a la statistical power. It's a different kind of probability. It's just saying, I want to tell my reviewer that with 80% or more probability, I'm going to have at least 10 people here, 10 people here, 10 people here. You see what I'm saying? It's not, there's no hypothesis test. So I wrote a paper about this, and this is what it looks like, right? And you can go read my paper, right? If you anticipate a response rate of 50, and my qualitative researcher wants 5 people in each of those paths to be able to do their job, then I need you to recruit 58 people in this pilot. That's one approach. It's pretty cool. Approach number 2. A lot of you are going to want pretty good, estimate of non-response rate going into your full scale. Like when you're writing your full scale, inevitably every reviewer is going to look to see, did they tell me what they thought the non-response rate is? You better have it. So suppose you're a researcher that doesn't really have good prior data, and you're going to choose the sample size for your pilot so that you have a good grip on what the non-response rate is. Isn't that a sensible thing? That's approach number 2. This one requires slightly more data. So here you would choose your margin of error. You would say, okay, I want a response rate with a confidence band that is this wide or this wide or this wide, right? So you choose how much certainty do you want. When I say I'm going to have 72% non-responders, how much certainty do you want to have? How big do you want that band to be around it? And then I can just choose the sample size for the pilot so that when you're done with the pilot, you say, my non-response rate is blank, and guess what? The confidence interval is exactly the size you wanted it to be. So that's approach number 2. So, and this does require a little bit more data, right? So if you wanted your margin of error to be 0.10, right? Which is 0.10 to 0.15 is what most people like. All right? You'll need 100, for example, right? You guys see what I'm talking about? None of these sample size calculators are testing effects. Let me give you a third approach. This is the go, no go. A lot of people call these proof of concept pilots. That's fine. This is rare but becoming more common. This is exactly what Billy just said. So you could use a hypothesis test, but just bear with me. It's not your standard one. It's not like I'm testing treatment A versus B. You could use a hypothesis test that are not related to treatment effects, but that might be related to some other metric of success. For example, all right, Billy, I'm winging it here, okay? You want an N for the pilots so that you have 80% power to reject the null that on average, there's no improvement in outcomes. So maybe what your go, no go is you want some certainty that in your pilot, this intervention doesn't hurt someone, right? Outcomes went down. Well, the only way you're going to know if outcomes went down or up with any certainty is you're going to have to be thoughtful about the sample size for that. This is not a treatment effect. This is a time effect. So these are called go, no-goes metrics. And Billy already, and so every statistician you work with knows how to do this. I don't have the formula here, but they all know how to do this, or they'll do it through simulation. Or another one is, you want to be able to reject the hypothesis of harm done. All right, you know what I mean? So like there's many different ways to conceptualize go, no. They could also be about the recruitment rate or whatever. So then you say what your go, no, go metric is, and it can be a hypothesis test. It's just not a treatment effect hypothesis test. It's about something else. It's about my recruitment rate has to be greater than whatever, you know? And then you choose the N in your pilot to be able to test that. You guys see that? So these do end up with a p-value in the paper you publish, the pilot paper, but it's not a p-value about treatment effects. Isn't that cool? It's a p-value telling you if you're going go or no go. All right, that's it, y'all. So these are the two papers where I show you approach numbers 1 and 2. I don't have anything written about approach number 3, but all your status, it's like approach number 3 is not really about smarts per se, you know what I mean? So any statistician you work with should be able to do it. All right, that's it. That's it, you guys. Any questions?